All right, Hafa everybody, and welcome to the regular second meeting of the Interagency Council for Coordinating Homelessness Programs. I would recognize that the following members are present. The Vice Chair, Mayor Robert Hoffman. We have the Executive Director of GURA, Ray Tapasnia. The President of the Guam Housing Corporation, Alice Tahirun. Representing the GRTA Executive Manager, Salbabalta, is Richard Ibanez. And then two appointed members, former First Lady Joanne Camacho and Dr. Margaret Hattori Uchima from the University of Guam and the Homeless Coalition. Let me also apologize. Let me also introduce other people that are in the room. We have the Director of the Guam State Clearinghouse, Stephanie Flores, the Acting Director of the Veterans Affairs Office, Tim Uggan, the Deputy Director of Public Works, Jesse Garcia, Rob Sinagastine of my office, Amor Say from GURA, and Kathy Titano from GURA, in addition to communication staff. So thank you everybody for attending. I would like to ask the members, and in the future we will try and get the minutes of these meetings posted prior to adoption, but I'll assure the general public that we'll have these minutes available. But I'll go ahead and take a few minutes for members of the commission to just go ahead and review the minutes of the initial meeting of July 13th. All right. Okay, I'll recognize First Lady Joanne. Mike's right there, First Lady. All right, there's a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second? By Mr. Tapasnia. All those in favor? Opposed, say nay. All right, minutes are adopted. Next item on our agenda, updates. I do want to just give you an update. Catholic Social Services continues to do their outreach efforts. There are now 70 homeless individuals that are in the shelters, and that includes including 12 children. That is a data point that I really wanted to share. Also, we are nearly at capacity at this shelter. GSA is negotiating right now with a few offerers for some additional housing for those families that are in a stable environment or a stable living situation. That might be the lead factor in transitioning them to some other residential housing options on the island. And so we'll continue to get an update on this effort. The other thing is the Office of Homelessness Assistance and Poverty Prevention with the Mayor's Council continues to work to develop themselves. I know that we are working on transferring funds over to the Mayor's Council. So at this point, I'll just ask Mayor Hoffman if there's anything else that he wanted to add on the Office of Homelessness Assistance and Poverty Prevention.
Thank you. We've also actively been receiving resumes that we'll be sending for profiling to DOA so they can qualify for the positions of program coordinator, program manager. Once we onboard them, they'll also help us develop the office and put it together based on their knowledge. And then we'll be reaching out, giving our suggestions for the MOAs for the agencies so we can have personnel assigned, as well as access to information. Angel's also on the Zoom. Angel, our executive director, Angel Sablan, he's also on the Zoom. He's listening in. So if there's anything, Angel, that I didn't cover.
All right, is there anything else, Director Sablan from the Mayor's Council that you might want to add?
No, I guess not.
If not, we'll proceed to the main portion of our agenda today, and that will include a presentation by Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority on their current and planned efforts with regards to homelessness. So I would like to pass it on to Mr. Tapasi, and also thank Ms. Taitano and Ms. Say for attending the meeting as well.
Thank you, LT. Can we go ahead and put the presentation up on the screen? Okay, let me just go ahead and start by giving a brief overview of the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority. We basically are the 800-pound gorilla in the room. On a bad year, we have a $69 million operation, all federal funds. And for FY 2020, we've actually received a significant amount of money, approximately $3.5 million initially for COVID-19, and then another allocation of $2.6 million. On top of that, we received another $7 million in Section 8 money because we've adjusted our payment standards. And in addition to that, we are in the process of applying for, or we've actually applied for a Section 108 loan guarantee to the tune of $12 million. That really kicks our operation up to about $95 million. And later on in the year, we'll be allocating another round of low-income housing tax credits to the tune of about $3.1 million. But over the course of 10 years, that's approximately $31 million. So all in all things considered, we're looking at about a $125 million operation for FY20. So I'll go ahead and next slide, or the first slide, that's fine. GORA roles. As the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Administration is where we get most of our money. The Public Housing Authority, or we are designated by HUD as the housing authority for the territory. And I'll talk about some of our key programs. Public housing, we have approximately 750 public housing units from Maritsu all the way up to Dedido. And the breakdown basically is we have units in Dedido, Mongmong, Tautu, Aganya Heights, Sinahanya, Asin, Zonya, Inarahan, Talafofu, Agates, Umatic, and Maritso. So we've got units all over the island, basically. We also have our Section 8 program, the Housing Choice Voucher. That's about a $37 million allocation from HUD. And we are authorized to issue 2,582 vouchers. That's basically over 2,500 families that we can provide a home to. And then you have Gumit Tranquilidad, the elderly resident unit down in Tuman, which is our most valuable asset. We have about 49 residents that live down there. We are also the grants administrator, the grants manager, and the compliance monitor for a number of federal grants, to include the Continuum of Care, Community Development Block Grant, as well the home grants and the emergency solution grants. HUD just recently designated us as the State Housing Finance Agency, specifically for housing counseling. So that we're very proud of that designation, and we hope to be receiving additional federal funds relative to that. We'll be applying for more money. As well, we allocate the low-income housing tax credits for the territory of Guam. That, as I mentioned earlier, is about 3.1 million, and over the course of 10 years, it's about 31 million. We allocate that every year. So We use that. We apply those funds towards building affordable homes. Next slide, please. Programs, and I'll quickly go through this. We have entitlement grants to starting with public housing. Public housing, we receive about $4 million in federal funding, and then another $2 million for capital fund. The Section 8 voucher program, as I mentioned, it's a $37 million allocation, and we award about 2,582 vouchers annually. Community development block grant, we get about $3 million, a little over $3 million. And then the emergency solutions grant, approximately $300,000. I wish we could get more. Home grants, we receive about $1 million a year. And then we compete every year for the Continuum of Care grants, and we get about $1.1 million for that, with that. Next slide, please. Community partners. We actually, we get a lot of money, but we don't do all the work ourselves. So we have to partner up with nonprofits, primarily faith-based organizations and civic organizations. We also partner with Guam to include DYA, behavioral health, public health, and the mayor's councils. We do a lot of community projects, particularly with our mayor here. So we're very proud of that. Past partners include the Catholic Social Service, the Salvation Army, Sanctuary, Habitat for Humanity, the Micronesia Community Development Council Corporation, and as I mentioned, Public Health, Behavioral Health, DYA. We also partner out with some smaller nonprofits and NGOs. Next slide, please. Okay, this is where it starts to get interesting, and sometimes it gets a little bit more technical for my pay scale, but the housing needs continuum. If you notice, there's 5 boxes here. It starts with the unsheltered, basically the street homeless, and then transitions toward permanent housing, the box you see on the right. Unsheltered, some of you know this, the preliminary point in time count for 2020 was 790. We're still awaiting final approval from HUD to come out with a final count. But that number is very, very promising for us, because we last year's 2019 PIT count was 875. So it's there's a significant drop. In fact, there's been a drop from previous years. So obviously what's been happening with the Homeless Coalition, with GURA, with the Guam Housing Corp, and all of our partners, it's working. And I really want to commend the Homeless Coalition for taking the lead on this. It's working, but we still have a lot of work ahead of us, and I commend the governor and lieutenant governor for reconstituting this homeless council, because our work is not done till all our parks and beaches are clean or are cleared of our homeless population. So you have the unsheltered in the first box, and then the second box would be the sheltered population. That's the Guma San Jose, Sanctuary for the youth, alley shelter for victims of domestic violence, and as the lieutenant governor mentioned, we have some emergency shelters that we stood up in recent weeks to deal with COVID. So a lot has been going on, and we're very happy to report that. Then you have the transitional housing box here, and basically you have Catholic Social Service in partnership with Barrow, and as well you have the Lighthouse Recovery Center in Tizen, operated by the Salvation Army, and that's basically a drug and alcohol rehabilitation facility. The next box is permanent supportive housing, and GURA's got the Housing First Rental Assistance Program, where we can house up to 50 homeowners. And as well, the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center is is a partner in this regard. And then finally, the last box, which is permanent housing. Of course, you have what I've talked about earlier, Section 8, public housing, Guma Tranquilidad. We also have approximately 1,500 units with our LIHTC projects. And then I do know that the Guam Housing Corporation has about 130 plus units that fall under this category of permanent housing. So basically, with our homeless population, some of them can go from unsheltered to sheltered and go up the chain and ultimately, at some point, reach permanent housing, and some of them jump back and forth. And we've seen cases where they actually go from unsheltered all the way to permanent. So there are success stories, but for the most part, many of them may have issues with respect to substance abuse or mental illness. So it really depends. They're all different.
All right, Ray, before we go on, I know that the point in time count is still pending, but could you talk about the categories, if you can do that, or any of your staff, the sheltered group? I know that there's a portion of this that are living in substandard housing that would also fall into the categories, but could you be at least a bit specific or talk to us about what the breakdown of that is or the different categories?
Okay. I think I would prefer to defer to Amor. You want to talk about that, Amor? I don't want to speak out of line.
All right, and so just for everybody, Amor Say is from GURA, and in particular, she has been the lead within the government and especially GURA on the Homeless Coalition. So Amor, first of all, thank you for all the years that you've been having this as your advocacy, but I'll go ahead and give you the floor.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to help, especially the homeless. Anyways, we had a breakdown. I don't have the actual numbers, but I think it's about 200 in shelters and 600 some in unsheltered. This year, what we did was we counted those ones living in substandard housing, but they own the properties or they are on lease with CLTC. Because remember in our past meeting, we said that the local government might be able to help them rehabilitate their housing. But as per HUD regulations, unsheltered who owns the property are not considered homeless because primarily they own the property. We're just counting them just for, the local government, so we'll be able to assist them. And pretty soon we will publish the numbers that we have once HUD approves it.
I'll just pause now and see if there's any questions from any of the members. Mrs. Camacho.
So I applaud you for the work that you do, but in the so-called sheltered, there are different organizations or nonprofits that do manage it. Would you be able to provide us a little more detail about what they do and what their capacities are, and if they're being threatened by funding, down the road? Because we need to know that so that it's easier to identify. So it's more like what
I think Margaret has the numbers.
Oh, you have it? Oh, no, that'd be great. Because, then as we find people that are unsheltered, we know where to say, okay, go here because this is where you fit.
Yeah, we should be able to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Hattori Uchima, did you have anything that I don't mind you adding, giving some context? And I guess I know that you've been in the point in time count for quite a while, so I'll go ahead and recognize you.
Well, Amor is great. I mean, she really manages the whole thing, and I just want to acknowledge former First Lady, because my first experience being a team leader, Amor had me take the former First Lady out counting, and we were really able to help some individuals, and she was really able to see the situation firsthand. And we were actually able to get somebody who was a long-term chronic homeless benefits and sheltered long-term. And he actually got help through Guam Behavioral Health, but it was from her direct intervention. But I just wanted to add on to what Amor is saying, and of course, Director, it is complicated sometimes when we count, because although we have the shelter count, which includes all, of course, the formal shelters, and then in the unsheltered count, we do, like you mentioned, we go to the areas where people are in substandard housing. So those in substandard housing are actually in the unsheltered number. And we're very careful to follow the HUD definition as we're doing the counting, because we just need to really identify, is the housing so bad that they do meet the HUD definition. We just have to be careful. There were some years where we needed clarification from HUD to make sure that we weren't over counting, right? And so I think the teams are very sophisticated, and I really feel the number that we're at is very accurate. Yeah. But it's very good that we continue to count those living in substandard housing. We do see a lot of children in those, so it's a lot of families, versus the street where you see fewer families, but there still are families, of course, on the street. But that substandard housing, I think, is where the council, can also intervene, because those people really, they're sleeping on plywood, on pallets, and they may, like, I think or someone mentioned last meeting, that they may own the land, land rich but cash poor, and some of them have been struggling for years just trying to build their own shelter on their property. Some of them are living in cars, but they own the land. So I mean, that's a huge area that needs to be addressed.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Correct. Back up one. Okay, beneficiaries. As with everything we do at GURA, it's all of our programs there are income eligibility requirements. We target lower income individuals and households, but we also target specialty or special populations and special needs groups, to include, of course, the elderly, persons with disabilities, homeless persons, victims of family violence and domestic abuse. And as well, we have a significant homeless vet population. I believe we may be the highest per capita with respect to our veteran community. And GURA receives vouchers to help in that regard, but some of the challenges we're facing is these vouchers require referrals from the appropriate entities, such as the U.S. Veterans Affairs. Next slide, please. Programs, projects, and activities. The Housing Authority, of course, has the public housing in Section 8 housing choice voucher. I talked about that earlier. But we also have rapid rehousing efforts going on. And basically, what that means is if you lose a home due to COVID-19, or you've been laid off, or something similar, we will work together with our nonprofit partners to try and get you get a home or get a roof put over your head. We also have the homeless youth housing, and basically that's a sanctuary. And then the next item would be chronic homeless housing. Unfortunately, many times we see after we get an individual or a family into housing, they end up 2-3 weeks later becoming homeless again. And part of that may be, again, a result of mental illness or substance abuse. So those are some of the challenges we face. Rental and utilities assistance, we partner with the Salvation Army, and you know they've been a great partner. Many, particularly during COVID-19, many people have actually had trouble paying down on their rent, and the Salvation Army has stepped up to the plate. Then you have the housing for domestic violence victims. Of course, that's the Alley Shelter, and Gura actually built Alley Shelter 1. So we've been, I mean, they've been a great partner, and I think they're doing an outstanding job. Next slide. Hud Cares Act Funding. And basically, this is COVID-19 funds, PPR, prepare, prevent, and respond. So everything's got to be related to our preparation, our prevention, and our response. But basically, I can't speak to great detail on this because it's still pending HUD approval. But as I mentioned earlier, we received 3.5 million and then a second allocation of 2.6. We'll be applying these funds towards the following: rent relief, and this has been in the media in recent weeks. We've partnered with a nonprofit to provide some rent relief, we hope to get approval from HUD. I mentioned last week that we were hoping to get approval this week. I think it's going to look like possibly next week, but things are moving along pretty smoothly. Then,
could you explain, I guess, what the parameters of this pending project for rent relief, and if you could, who the potential eligible parties, applicants could be?
okay, you put me in the spot, sir, because HUD doesn't really like it when when things get out before they actually approve it. But basically, we've partnered up with the Salvation Army. Kathy, how much money did we give them? And Catholic Social Service. But basically, they'll be able to reach out through their outreach efforts to those that have a difficult time meeting or paying down on their rent simply because they've lost their jobs, if it's COVID-19 related. So in particular, rent relief would be CSS and Salvation Army. And I guess that's on record now. But mortgage relief, we've actually partnered up with Alice's team at the Guam Housing Corporation. And I said a little bit about this in the media. We're going to be able, or at least Alice's group would be able to pay down up to 3 months of mortgage payments to income eligible households. So Alice, it's a little over 200, right? Right. So we're very excited about that, and we hope to get that started as early as next week once we get final approval. Then you have the rapid rehousing, and again, that's with, I'm sorry, with CSS both and Salvation Army. So again, I touched on this a little earlier. If you have lost your home as a result of COVID-19, through the Catholic Social Service and Salvation Army, they should be able to get you to the point, hopefully, if you meet all the requirements of having another home or another place you can call home. Then you have job training, and we've actually partnered with Manyetlu, a nonprofit, to provide resume building workshops, a whole number of job training workshops similar to what you would see with the Department of Labor. But that's one of the programs that we've engaged a private partner to do. We're also going to be applying some of our funds towards case management and operations, particularly with respect to CSS, Salvation Army. Again, everything's awaiting HUD's approval. We had hoped it would be this week. We're now anticipating by next week.
All right, so just to clarify, of course, these are competitive grants where you are submitting or recommending approval of these grants to these organizations, but all of that are pending HUD approval. So there's a structured process, and although it's not guaranteed because they still have to go through the process. So I guess that I would just give you a lifeline, Ray, and say this is what you're recommending to HUD, but HUD still has final say.
You are correct. And they're competitive grants as we award them. They weren't competitive when we received them. That's actually part of the CARES Act.
All right, so let's just stop here and see if there's any more questions. And one thing I would like to ask is, could you explain more the Continuum of Care funding? So as I see it, it's $1.1 million that is recurring annually. And maybe Kathy or Ray or Kathy, could you explain the beneficiaries? As I understand it, some of this is going to support some of the partners that are already, that's part of sustaining some housing options for specific target populations. But could you give us an overview? How long has this been in out there, and any information you can submit?
Okay, I'll go ahead and defer to my chief planner, Kathy Taitano.
LT and committee, council that is. The Continuum of Care is a program under the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We have been an authorized COC recipient or participant really since around 2003 or 2004, if I recall correctly. Anyway, it's been quite a while, and it is the vehicle that HUD uses to move monies to serve homeless populations, persons with disabilities. The overarching thing is that they are doubly homeless and with a disability. So the funds that we receive are received because GURA had applied for and was authorized to become a Continuum of Care recipient. The monies that come in then go out competitively. This is competitive at a national level. We collectively, Guam collectively applies for an app for funding through a consolidated application, and we put that forward. And what comes back is the awards from HUD based on how we score against the nationals. We currently are at about $1.1 million, and we use that to put out to nonprofit organizations and government entities who are able to provide services to this population of the homeless and those with a disability.
I know you can submit I know they're on your website. I've seen in the past report. I imagine it's a grant report or compliance report to HUD, but some of the current list of awardees, are these pretty much the members of the coalition, but I guess the operators of some of the facilities already described? Who would they be?
You're correct. In order to avail yourself of the funds, you must be a member of the Guam Homeless Coalition. So on Guam, the Continuum of Care vehicle is the Guam Homeless Coalition. And in order, once you're part of that, then you understand where the movement is going with respect to how HUD intends to fund. And that is how we competitively within the group select what projects are going to be put forth for the grants. And yeah, some of the recipients you've already heard of these funds for their various programs. CSS, Catholic Social Services one, TSA is another. Guma Mommy has received. And you know, the list is probably the details is escaping me, but altogether, they are all folks that you have heard and we have referred to in this presentation.
Kathy, if you could, I think maybe to the earlier point that Mrs. Camacho made, I know that, yes, there's some money that's coming out, but obviously it's not enough, right? And our job is to identify resources to supplement or opportunities. It would be helpful if we could have, and I know that maybe some of this exists already, but maybe an inventory of the different subsidized or approved housing options or placements, and then what their occupancy is and who their target population is. And I guess for us, one of the things we'll look at is identifying the gaps and understanding what additional resources need to push in. And as an example, in my meetings with Catholic Social Service and just looking at Ali Shelter, Mrs. Calvo Diana Calvo made a point that there are people that, or at least there's a family in Ali Shelter that really should move into a transitional housing setting because they exist to provide that emergency housing options for the victims of domestic violence or sexual abuse in some cases. But is that something that you already have readily available, or is that something you can put together?
Yeah, for the OHAP list, we were able to provide a listing of what these projects are. We gave a brief description of what they are and the amount of funding they receive. We didn't go into detail. We really wanted it to be at the level where the Mayor Hoffman, your folks could actually be able to put it out and use it as a way to direct people to the right resources. But I mean, even as we say that, this is an evolving thing, programs in HUD and everywhere else and directions kind of fall in and out of favor. But, the coalition stays on top of that.
Great. All right. And so, yeah, maybe actually for the OHAP trying to integrate and understand and that really meet the need, trying to figure out where all the people are. At this point, I'm going to pass it on to the clearinghouse director, and she has some information to supplement on the continuum of care.
Yes, correct. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. We worked with Kathy to make sure that we got the information for today's meeting because that was the task that we received at the last meeting. So she provided us with the list of the sub-recipients under the Continuum of Care Assistance Program and with their budgeted amount and whether or not what the qualification requirements were. So just so that you have an example, do you want me to go through all of it?
Yeah, why don't you do that, and of course we'll provide the public and the members.
Then we can submit the email. We can email it to all the members afterwards. Sure. This list as well as the other program resources that we were able to collect from the other agencies throughout the government. Sure. for this population. So for the subrecipient, the permanent housing program under GURA, this is for Housing First Rental Assistance Program, tenant-based rental assistance program with provisions of support services. The budgeted amount is $420,366, and that's handled by GURA themselves. Catholic Social Services is a subrecipient for the Permanent Supportive Housing Program and Joint Transitional Rapid Housing Program. So this is the Itahami Permanent Housing Program, which is a permanent supportive housing for chronic homeless individuals and families. Their budgeted amount is $158,736. Catholic Social Service, again, is the rehousing permanent, joint transitional rapid rehousing permanent housing. This is the Guy Animus, which is to provide housing and support services for victims of domestic violence. This budgeted amount is $153,301. Gumamami Incorporated is a joint transitional rapid rehousing, permanent rehousing. This is the INADZIC. This is to provide housing and support services to persons with disabilities who are victims of domestic violence. Their budgeted amount is $91,878. Oasis Empowerment Center receives transitional housing support. This is for Women's Recovery Residential Program. They receive $505,000 per year. And this is residential transitional housing for women only. Then Oasis Empowerment receives another grant for transitional housing. This is called Empowered Together. Provides housing and supportive services to single mothers with children who are recovering from substance abuse. The budgeted amount here is $134,888. And the qualification is women who have come out of the program with children, okay? Sanctuary Incorporated, they have a joint transitional rapid rehousing for permanent housing. This is for the Guam and Hoban. This is to provide housing and support services for homeless youth age 16 to 24. And they receive $134,888. Salvation Army receives some funding for homeless management information systems. This is a human services database that allows authorized personnel at homeless shelters and social service providers to enter, track, and report on information concerning homeless clients. It's a coordinated entry system process for conducting comprehensive entries of housing services needs for individuals and families. So they receive $117,146, and then another amount of $53,021. And then lastly, the Salvation Army receives funding under the Rapid Rehousing and Homeless Prevention. This is the Emergency Solutions Grant to provide rental and utilities assistance to rapidly rehouse homeless persons. Homeless prevention, this is to assist persons who are at risk of becoming homeless, pay arrears of rent and utilities to avoid eviction, and they currently receive $217,728. And then as part of our further trying to do the resource mapping and preparation for the standing up of the OHAP, we contacted Department of Public Health and Social Services, and there are several programs there. For example, the SNAP program, the qualification is low income, and the income threshold amount is 135% of the poverty, national poverty level. And then there's the Child Care Development Funds. Again, the qualification is to be low income. The Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. There is the Gumo San Jose program, which is administered by Catholic Social Services. Then, of course, we have the MIP and Medicaid programs. Under Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness, we have the Guma Hinemlu. This is homelessness with homelessness assistance for individuals with mental health disabilities. Then we also have the CWEP program, which is the Community Work Employment Program. The qualification is just you have to be lacking in work experience. Then there's the Senior Community Services Employment Program, which is again for senior citizens who lack work experience. Disabled Veterans Outreach Program, and these are all under Department of Labor. The qualification is you must be a disabled veteran. And then I think that all the other ones have been covered. And the only last one was the Guam Energy Office for Weatherization Assistance Program. This is for getting appliances and for low-income families.
Thanks, Stephanie. You know, my read based on the distribution of the coalition obviously really is a drop in the bucket based on what you could imagine is the operational costs of all the different housing options. So already clearly there, you know, some people might say, oh, that's a lot of money. It really isn't when you're going out there. I mean, I learned that myself when GSA has been working on the procurement for this temporary shelter. Any questions or comments from any members? Mrs. Camacho?
I think it's very good. And what you're asking for with the inventory will help us, because when you take these monies and you say, okay, this program does this, and the capacity is 50. How much does that translate per individual? You know, you kind of, because obviously there's operational costs in there too, right? But still, it gives you an idea whether we're meeting our needs or we really need to go find other creative ways to get it. Or maybe there's duplication somewhere. I don't know. But I'm kind of like one of those financial person that needs to make sure that, you know, if we're spending too much in one area, maybe we need to figure out how to make it better.
Sure. Any other question or comments from any other members? If not, we'll return to you, Mr. Tapasnia.
Thank you, LT. Hence, there isn't a single day that we have a breathing room. But the next slide, are we able to get back to? Okay. Housing Subcommittee. Okay. We talked about this last week that we might want to break up into Housing Subcommittee, so I wanted to talk about this for a little bit. My recommendation is maybe one subcommittee can include both GORA and the Guam Housing Corporation. It's my belief that the corporation has assets and resources as well. GORA's got resources where we can partner up and do a lot better than if we were to operate in vacuum. And I think that the reconstitution of this council is really going to create synergies between many of the players, not just who are on the council, but as well public health, behavioral health, and DYA. And then I also want to recommend a second subcommittee that would include the Transit Authority, and I'm glad Richard is here. Many of our families are challenged with transportation, reliable and safe transportation. We have a difficult time leasing out property, some of our facilities down south, particularly in Umatic, Maritza, simply because nobody wants to live there if you work up in Dedido or Tamuning. So, you know, I'd like to have a separate subcommittee where we meet regularly with GRTA to see how we can best provide reliable and safe transportation to our families, with the hope of one day weaning them away from public assistance and public housing. Some of the objectives that we identified with respect to these subcommittees is a needs gap assessment. We can sit down, identify all the gaps, and see whether we can minimize them, if not completely eradicate it. Analysis of housing inventory. Fortunately, GORA's done a lot of homework. We actually commissioned a housing study last year, latter part of last year, and we completed it, I believe, January of this year. The housing studies on our website, gora.org. I recommend that everybody on this council please read the housing study. It's quite comprehensive, and it really will set direction or set the direction that we may want to go. Last bullet point is exploration research. You know, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's look at what they do in other jurisdictions, best practices. I mentioned this last time. You have the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. Let's tap their resources and see how we can collaborate. So, you know, that's my recommendation in terms of what we should do to create subcommittees.
All right, Mayor Hoffman.
Thank you, Ray, for the update. I had just a quick question on it. Do we know if there's any affordable housing units that will be coming online soon, or what's the target date? Is anybody building anything out there that we would know of, that we can at least have some kind of inkling of, and then how many more are on the pipes or projects? Is that something you're allowed to say, or do you know, or somebody else might know?
We actually have, through our LIHTC program, we actually have, is it phase 4 of Summertown? That's phase 2, right? Okay, so we have Ironwood, Villa Del Mar, phase 2 that should be completed sometime this year as well. Phase 4 of Summertown. So, and as I mentioned earlier, we also will be awarding or allocating additional tax credits to the tune of $3.1 million or $31 million. So we're working on the qualified action plan so that we can issue that hopefully in the next coming months. But basically, that's one of the options we use to build affordable homes, and it's been very successful. In totality, I believe we've built about 1,500 LIHTC homes dating back to 2005.
Ray, could you, I know that there are different vouchers that go out. I imagine that those were subsets of some of the programs that you use in particular, and the Veterans Affairs Acting Directors here. I know we've been spending a lot of time talking about, as an example, vouchers for homeless veterans. What are the different voucher programs, and then where are you seeing some gaps? It might be in the outreach side or eligibility.
Okay, as I mentioned, we have in totality about 2,582 vouchers. Of that amount, a majority are just regular housing choice vouchers, the Section 8 vouchers, and then we also have target funded vouchers. And those target funded vouchers include, as you mentioned, VASH being the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing program. So you have, I believe, 50 some of those vouchers that we've already issued. We've applied for an additional 10 this year, and the U.S. Veterans Affairs has asked us whether we want to reapply for more. Well, the challenge we face, and GURA gets, we actually get penalized when we're not able to issue these vouchers. The challenge we face is we need to get the U.S. Veterans Affairs, the local office, more to be more aggressive in advocating for homeless veterans. The referrals have to come to our office, and then we're able to process these guys in. But it has been a challenge. I think since I've come on board, honestly, we've gotten maybe one referral, and that's 18 months in the making. So as well, we have other target funded vouchers. We have the non-elderly disabled. We have mainstream vouchers. For the most part, that's all issued out. And then, yeah, family unification vouchers, and that's pretty much all tapped out as well. So I would say,
is there a waiting list for vouchers that are already you've reached the number?
we not approximately 97% of our 2,582 vouchers are issued. The remaining 3%, we've actually, because we went on a very aggressive campaign to lease up our vouchers. Unfortunately, we issue the voucher, the family goes out and they can't find a unit. Either they didn't want to contract with Section 8, or there just isn't a unit that can accommodate them. So that's the challenge. I'd like to have 100%, but 97% is not bad. But you know,
So it's possible actually that if, as an example, Guam Housing Corporation brings up some of the units in disrepair, that might be a place for placement, or if the government is going to acquire a facility, part of it could be to enable voucher system or the use of the vouchers.
absolutely. In fact, one of the things that HUD allows us to do, or one of the options, is a project-based voucher system where we commit a specified number of vouchers to a particular development. So we could actually work out something with them. Of course, it has to be done through a competitive process, but certainly project-based voucher. We did it most recently with Cortac, and I think 112 of those vouchers are committed to them. But we were able to go as far as 20% of our vouchers, so we're still looking about 300 to 400 more that we can actually project-base.
So there are vouchers that people have, but they're having a struggle finding places that meet the income requirement. I imagine the military housing is something that works for the consumer, but against this population because of the amount. But as you pointed out, you got an increase in Section 8 for that?
That is correct. And one of the things we want to do is, particularly, it was a real eye-opener with COVID-19. We want to go on a very aggressive marketing campaign, and we want to let the landlords know that you may have not been paid if you were just renting to Joe Public, but if you had a Section 8 tenant, GURA didn't even miss a beat. We paid every landlord on a timely manner. So it is really, particularly during difficult times, it's really good to be a Section 8 landlord, because you're going to get paid nonetheless.
Last thing for me on this subject before I turn to the other committee members, council members, Can you talk about the exclusions for eligibility for housing programs or HUD supported programs? And so I think that part of that is identifying a target population that is falling outside of the federally subsidized programs.
Are you talking about those with
Convictions,
convictions,
et cetera, yes.
criminal sexual conduct?
Right, or people maybe, why would people be banned from getting HUD funds?
Well,
or HUD?
Kathy, you wanna talk about that? More specific. Let me defer to the expert here.
I'm gonna ask for Norma Sinicolas, the Section 8 administrator, to forgive me, but what I do know of her program is that there are only 2 areas that would prevent an individual from seeking housing under Section 8, and that would be if you have a CSC conviction, a criminal sexual conduct conviction, and if you have a drug conviction for cooking meth. Yeah, it's very narrow. Now that said, those are not the. We do also have a mechanism in the office where those types of your records for everybody that lives in the housing is going to be checked, or proposed household is going to be checked, and there are times when some of the activities of the would-be renters will raise a flag, and the office will have to review.
So sex convictions, for example, would they be excluded if Continuum of Care funding, for example, is supporting any one of the shelters? And of course, sometimes it's inappropriate. But are they ineligible to get into certain shelters, if they have a conviction, or is that just really based on the shelter operations and their need to maintain their own safety for their clients?
I'm going to err on the side of program compliance, and that is if some activity of the receiving organization that they intend to pay with the funds that are provided by the COC, they would not be able to serve that population. And I really will get back to the council and let you know what the specifics are for the COC and the other programs at GORA.
Okay, any other questions from any members of the council for GURA? Alice?
No, I just wanted to respond to Mayor Hoffman. Is that all right? In reference with partnership with GURA, you asked how many homes, or are there any idea, do you have any idea if there's any thing out there in the works? So Guam Housing is working on a request for information to build homes in about 20 to 26 acres in Asadis. We have 2 units. I have my planning and—
Asadis is near Simon Sanchez, right?
Yes, Asadis is right across FB, Leongro. There's 2 apartment complexes there right now that hold, each has 12 units. So I'm working with my grant person, my planning and development administrator, to seek a grant from GURA to renovate and repair at least 6 units to be used as temporary emergency shelter in that area. So that's in the works right now. And then we are working on plans for Lada to renovate. We have about 115 units in Lada. Currently 89 are occupied. We do provide, we have 2 types. We have Section 8, and we also have the average individual out there who needs low rental housing. So we do take care of that population.
So you have in Lada, you have, that's right, you have the, and these are not the dollar homes. These are the Lada homes that are sort of around from Wedding Yell Elementary, right?
Yes, in that area. So we have about 115 units there. 89 are occupied. We do rent to Section 8, and we're very happy that they pay us on time. As you all know, Guam Housing is revenue generating. We do not get revenue from the government, local government, or federal government. So we try to partner with GORA as much as possible. So those are things that we're currently working on. And I think Ray mentioned, and we're also working on a loan program to allow individuals to renovate, repair, and retain their homes. And maybe that's something that we can work with the unsheltered or the substandard housing. Yeah.
All right, any questions or comments?
Yeah, and I think Habitat can also help in that area, because when you put a kitty into your home, it makes you want to make sure that you maintain it. The question had, Director Tapasna, is, you know, these tax credit places, who monitors and audits their stuff? Because, you know, we're going to make sure that
We
people
do.
that really need it are in it.
My staff does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty strict. It's a IRS regulated program. So yeah, the feds are on us quite regularly.
For those, like for the Somerville and those kind of places?
Correct.
Okay. It just kind of baffles me because sometimes I see really nice Lexus outside or nice cars, and you know, you kind of wonder what's going on. But anyway, that's just,
I wonder as well.
no, as long as it's being audited, that's what matters. Thank
But
you.
you know, and I just want to close with, you know, we do more than, I mean, we provide a home to approximately 4,882 families, but we do a lot more than that. We recently completed the Central Police Precinct Command in Sinahanya. That was a $4.1 million project. We started construction on Mayor Hoffman's Central Arts Hall, and we'll be having some kind of ceremonial event in the next couple of weeks. We also have the Women's Treatment Center in Tizen. We've partnered out with the Salvation Army, and that's really near and dear to my heart, because a lot of women will not seek treatment because of the children, and we'll be able to address that together with the Salvation Army. As well, we have the Mongmong Totumaiti basketball court, the Interahan basketball court that will be breaking ground to. And finally, the Umatic baseball field. I think we're going to be able to cut the ribbon to that in the next 3 weeks. So,
All right. So you also support some of the community building and that kind of stuff.
that's what I
Community
mean
development.
by 800-pound gorilla.
All right. Okay. So I know that I know we're a little bit over time, but I do want to point out a couple things. The Veterans Affairs Director is here, and maybe next meeting he's been engaging with his federal counterparts about some opportunities. I do want to point out, when the Secretary of the Veterans Affairs was here last year, Secretary Wilkie, in addition to a meeting I had with his undersecretary in Washington last year, they talked about how Guam did not have any assisted living for veterans, and unsure whether or not that is a need. But there's a tremendous amount of resources that are out there. And I think the business model is that they prefer for local veterans offices to partner with nonprofits or to contract it out so that service providers are doing it. And then they provide some funding for veterans, of course, meeting some eligibility requirements. But I think that might be another area that we might be able to proceed as we, you know, in the big picture in the long term, come up with additional options. So before we take questions or open for public comment, I just wanted to say that thank you for all the work you're doing. This helps us understand where the gaps are. There are gaps because we're seeing street homeless, and we know that people are having already challenges trying to get even rental units that could be paid for by the vouchers. And so in terms of the committee structure, what I'll do is I want to recommend to the members, and then next week we can discuss it a little bit more. I do agree that there should be a transportation subcommittee, a housing subcommittee, a community outreach and case management subcommittee, and a resource inventory and management subcommittee. Those 4 areas. I'll go ahead and we'll set up kind of like some suggestions, and then we'll get the input. But obviously already the housing subcommittee clearly is going to be led by the 2 housing authorities. But transportation, housing, community outreach and case management, really I'm looking at this group to identify all the target populations, what the gaps are in those populations, so we can try and align the plans. And then the resource inventory management, this is really kind of like what the First Lady was talking about. What is the current inventory? Who's meeting it? And then also trying to identify partnerships and work with nonprofits, Habitat you mentioned, et cetera. Next week, we will have another presentation. Our office will work on this, and then we'll also work in, and maybe Dr. Uchima, of course, the Homeless Coalition is always able to come. I wonder whether or not you can talk to Angelina Lape to see whether or not she would like to maybe engage the council next week. If not, I know I have behavioral health that has reached out already, looking at some of their target populations. And then, of course, public health, I would say, would be following that. So I'll have Stephanie work with you, Dr. Uchima, and next week, again, we'll get more insight as we really understand what's out there. All right, let's go to, this is the public comment period, and we'll go ahead and entertain any questions. We'll do our best to answer. Again, we'll be having this meeting weekly. At least that's the posture that we're on right now. And so I guess I'll turn it over to Crystal or Janella, and we can go ahead and engage. All right, Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes. Yeah, you can unmute yourself, Madam Speaker. There you are.
Can you hear me? Half a day, Mananasi.
One more time, can you unmute?
I am, can you hear me now? I'm on.
Mike, well, I think we're having a hard time hearing.
Can you hear me now?
Hold on for a minute, Speaker. We're checking our side. Okay, Speaker Barnes. Oh, no, we still can't. Okay, hold on for a minute. Hold on, we're checking our technical. Oh, there. Okay, Speaker Barnes. Oh, not yet. One moment, Madam Speaker.
Half a day, sorry.
Speaker Barnes, we're having problems. We can't hear you. Do you have, I would invite you, do you want to type the question over through the chat, and we'll send it and we'll do it. We'll try and see whether or not it's our technical issue. Speaker Barnes, can you do it one more time? Yes, yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, Mananasi. Thank you for having me at this meeting in the legislature. First of all, I had several questions during the presentation, but a lot of it was answered. I'm very appreciative about the subcommittees that you will be having, and I'm hoping that we can engage with them. And if there's anything from the legislative perspective, especially as it relates to the oversight chair on housing, I'm a part of that committee, and what we can do is continue to collaborate in case any policy is needed. I did have a question as it related to the Guam Housing Corporation and the inventory that they had. And I know Ms. Alice spoke about the numbers, 115. And off of that, 89 is utilized, already filled up. Out of the remainder of that, is there any provision just for the homeless program component, or is that going to be included in the inventory for renting out?
So actually there's 98 occupied, so we have 41 vacant. Of that 41, 19 need major repairs. We have a team working on repairing as quickly as possible. There are no contingencies or plans to utilize that or use that for the homeless. We are working, as I mentioned earlier, to try and get a grant to renovate and identify units at our Sutness property to be utilized for homeless transitional and or emergency shelter.
Anything for the veterans that can be utilized right now? I think there's some possible grants and nonprofits out there that are offering that have resources to give to house the veterans. So I know that in the past we worked closely with WestCare to try and put some veterans in, and if there's anyone there, we can facilitate moving forward with that.
Yeah, there are no restrictions for veterans as long as if they come in and they have a voucher, we're open to that as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Governor. And I'm hoping to see what we can do to continue the collaboration. I know that my colleague Senator Clint is also online with us, and I'm hoping that I can work closely with a couple of the subcommittees that are in there, and we can probably chat offline. I also see that the mayor of Sinajana is there with you, and I just want to thank everybody for their hard work and continuing to address what we see that's apparent here in our community, and wanting to make sure that everyone gets a shelter here in the Agana area, right at the corner of where our office is situated. We still see a lot of them that go around here, and we're hoping that we can try and do some wraparound services to help each and every one of them out there. Yesterday, there was an incident. I don't think the police were caught, but there was an altercation that happened, and some shouting and screaming, and sometimes I think we just need to go up and address the situation head on, because it literally happens in broad daylight out here, the corner across the cathedral and the area where the Emporium is at.
Okay, Madam Speaker, well, thank you very much for that. I do invite members of the legislature to be active. I know Senator Rangel in particular was out at the point of time count with me, and we have been talking about a lot of the population that are stranded, perhaps trying to get back, or on the family reunification side. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Next. All right. All right, if there's anybody that, if there are no other questions or comments, again, I would like to thank everybody for participating. Again, we will reconvene next week at 11 o'clock on Thursday. I appreciate all your efforts as we continue to address the population. So thank you very much. Oh, one last thing, Mayor Hoffman.
I asked the Lieutenant Governor on the side if the shelterees at the dorm, have they been tested, and I'll let him give his response.
Yeah, you know, some of them have been tested in the past, but I think we have, we'll work together. That's a target population that we're working with, and I will work on that. We'll get the answer there. I know that is on the radar for them, in addition to some of the other target population that's going on. First Lady Joanne.
Yeah, and on that, I know that there's some outreach on what the needs may be. Can we get an updated list on what the needs are so that we can?
Yes, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Rotary Club and the FSM organizations for some donations for humanitarian supplies at the shelter in Mighty. I do encourage others to channel donations through the Catholic Social Services or through any or through the Mayor's Council to meet the demand.
Specific requests would be great.
So yeah, finding out, we'll get a needs determination from them on what can be done. Of course, you know, again, there's 12 children. Let me just verify that there are 13 children in the shelter. So obviously, you know, if there's little things that can occupy time, things like that, those would be appreciated. Bedding has been something that we've gotten together, and I know that I had talked to Catholic Social Services about seeing how they can have a food pantry. And I know that they're working all the details through their facility. Civil Defense has been sending supplies over, getting internet access so that they can help with their casework that they're doing up there. But we'll go ahead and get a list of needs, and Stephanie will coordinate that with the members. Thank you, First Lady, for
Board games, cards.
Yeah, things like that.
all right. If no other things, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.